This year, during the major BRICS Leaders Summit in Russia, the main focus was on a handshake and reconciliation between China's President Xi Jinping and India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Both leaders claim to have reached an agreement that resolves the long-standing border dispute, giving an impression that old grudges are now forgiven. India's Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar announced that the two countries have agreed to resume border patrols, returning to the status before the 2020 clashes. Reportedly, about 75% of the disengagement issues along the border have been resolved. Although the details of the agreement haven't been disclosed, the fact that a 70-year-old border conflict appears to be settled so quickly has left Chinese citizens in disbelief. The news immediately spread on Chinese social media, sparking waves of speculation. Many people online worry that, in a bid to escape international pressures, Xi might repeat former CCP leader Jiang Zemin's past mistakes by ceding large swaths of Chinese territory. Rumors circulate online that the land China has supposedly ceded to India is about 2.5 times the size of Taiwan. This has triggered outrage, with many posts accusing Xi of being a traitor for giving away land. On X, some users commented, "President Xi's actions are disgraceful and will go down in history, and India probably never expected to face an opponent as foolish and ridiculous as the current Chinese government." Others questioned, "Weren't we supposed to not give up an inch? Why act generous now?" One person remarked, quote, "Xi's timid demeanor in front of Modi, how will he compete with the US for global dominance?" However, some analysts believe there isn't concrete evidence yet that Xi has officially ceded the disputed Chinese land. But reaching such an agreement does suggest that the CCP has adjusted its approach toward India and made significant concessions. The China-India border stretches 3,440 kilometers, and disputes have lingered since the CCP's establishment and India's independence from Britain. With shifting lakes, rivers, and even snowdrifts on the Himalayas, the boundary has always been in flux. Both countries have stationed troops along the disputed frontier, with tensions sometimes escalating to violence. In 2020, Chinese and Indian border forces faced off in the Galwan Valley, resulting in the deadliest clash in decades, with at least 20 Indian and 4 Chinese soldiers killed. The incident stoked anti-China sentiment in India, plummeting China-India relations to a freezing point. Amid concerns about CCP's military expansion, the previously dormant quadrilateral security dialogue between the US, Australia, Japan, and India held its first leaders' summit in 2021. India openly aligned with the US, effectively positioning itself against the CCP, making China and India almost adversaries. Yet the CCP did not back down. On September 1st, 2023, China released its official map for the year, including disputed territories with India, prompting New Delhi to issue a strong protest to Beijing. Since the 2020 Galwan Valley conflict, China-India relations have mostly been frozen, with India standing firm. As Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar put it, "At the end of the day, the state of the border will determine the state of the relationship." India's position is clear. The CCP must withdraw from territories occupied in 2020 and cease its provocations along the border. Otherwise, relations will not move forward. Returning to the pre-2020 state means China must withdraw from the Tiananhe Valley, Burtsanala Valley, and the upper reaches of Dianjiaochu, restoring India's patrolling rights in these areas, which span around 1,000 square kilometers. After 4 years of refusal, the CCP finally agreed to this Indian demand. By pulling out from the Tiananhe Valley disputed zone and returning to the pre-2020 patrol routes, China hasn't directly renounced sovereignty over the area, but its actions suggest it has abandoned its original plans and given up any intent to contest the land. The Tiananhe Valley disputed zone refers to the region around China's Tiananhe River, situated between Tianyuandian and Heweitian outposts. To the north is the Depsang Plain, and to the south lies the Shidago Basin. Although the CCP insists on sovereignty over this land, India has maintained actual control over it, calling the disputed area Depsang. Commentary suggests Xi Jinping initiated the China-India confrontation with a wolf warrior stance, only to retreat in a bear-like manner. National Security Research Institute Director She Mingshi in Taiwan's Ministry of Defense analyzed that China's faltering economy and international isolation are pressuring Xi internally. pushing him to seek harmony abroad. Exercises continue around the Taiwan Strait in the east, and he does not want heightened tensions in the west. Xi stated, China is trying to counter its global isolation and encirclement. It needs to adjust the wolf warrior diplomatic image and improve relations with the US, Europe, and neighboring countries. Economically, with countries shifting investments to India and pulling back from China, China aims to change this trend. Before 2020, India protested CCP activities in this barren disputed area as China built extensive infrastructure and roads. Concurrently, the CCP, under the Belt and Road Initiative, attempted to construct a road from Yadong to Doklam, sparking Indian fears. India saw China's road construction as a move to erase its advantage in the area and establish military control, threatening both Indian territory and pilgrim routes. At the time, the Economic Times of India reported that China's road posed a severe threat to the Siliguri corridor, a vital strategic link. Should this corridor be cut off, India's northeastern forces would be divided and surrounded. So, despite Beijing's warnings, India adopted a hardline stance. This standoff escalated from a war of words to armed conflict, culminating in a bloody event that shocked the world, marking the first shots fired in 40 years. Today, India is no longer the India of the past. It is now the world's fifth largest economy, a nuclear-armed nation, and regarded as a potential superpower. India has the world's third highest defense budget, reaching $76.6 billion in 2021. Following the armed clash, India took a tough stance, enacting measures to limit Chinese companies' investments and operations. Hundreds of popular Chinese mobile apps were banned, including TikTok, WeChat, and Alibaba's UC browser. India's Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology issued a statement claiming these apps engage in activities that harm India's sovereignty and territorial integrity, jeopardize national defense, security, and public order. Dr. Mahjabin Banu of Delhi's Policy Research and Empowerment Association previously noted that India's social media-driven anti-China movement reflects an outpouring of public sentiment. Some analysts believe that this move by the Indian government is more about easing public sentiment while also strengthening Prime Minister Modi's self-reliance and Made in India initiatives. At the same time, India halted direct flights between China and India. In December 2019, at the height of China-India direct flights, there were 539 flights that month, 371 operated by Chinese airlines and 168 by Indian airlines. After a 4-year halt, Beijing has repeatedly called for resuming direct flights, but New Delhi insists that resolving the border dispute must come first, followed by discussions on direct flights and other bilateral issues. This approach aligns with India's self-reliance economic model and is seen as a way to isolate Chinese products. Since the 2020 Galwan Valley conflict, China and India have held dozens of border negotiations without progress. So why has there been a breakthrough in recent weeks? Why is the CCP making significant concessions now? Commentators suggest it's a reluctant move by Xi Jinping, driven by pressure both domestically and internationally, possibly even hinting at shifts within the CCP's political landscape. With his diplomatic stance faltering, Xi's position has wavered, prompting him to act decisively to restore his authority. First, after the 2020 border conflict, the CCP tried to improve relations with India by emphasizing the economic potential and mutual long-term interests, seeking to revive high-level exchanges. However, it's continued pressuring India on the border to leverage India's Tibet policy and India-US relations only for this to backfire as India responded firmly, neutralizing the CCP's tactics. Second, the global strategic landscape now revolves around US-China rivalry. The US launched its Indo-Pacific strategy aiming to contain the CCP with India as a critical pillar. US-India relations are now considered one of the defining partnerships of the 21st century. The conflict with the CCP has only strengthened India's resolve to align more closely with the US, rapidly deepening US-India strategic cooperation and reinforcing the quadrilateral security dialogue framework. This creates a challenging situation for the CCP, facing a potential two-front confrontation with the US in the east and India in the west. To win over India, the CCP has realized it must make concessions on the border issue. As China faces global isolation, it sees India as a potential opening to break out of its strategic predicament. Additionally, as the world's second largest economy, China is currently experiencing a sharp economic decline. With domestic demand shrinking and investment yields limited, exports remain one of the few growth drivers. Meanwhile, India's economy is growing strongly. China is India's main trading partner, with Chinese exports to India exceeding $100 billion since 2020, resulting in a sizable trade surplus. Improved China-India relations could significantly benefit China's economy. However, the border conflict has left China-India relations essentially frozen. Trade, the mainstay of economic relations between the two, remains highly unstable. India's trade policies have also imposed restrictions on Chinese imports. According to China's Ministry of Commerce Trade Relief Information Network, India initiated 22 trade relief investigations against China in 2023, making it the country with the most such investigations against China globally. Currently, India has 54 ongoing anti-dumping investigations, 47 of which involve Chinese companies. During this BRICS summit, the leaders of China and India held their first face-to-face talks in 5 years, with their last meeting taking place in 2019 in India. Clearly, the CCP had already made compromises before this meeting. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi emphasized that China-India relations are vital for global peace and that maintaining peace and stability should remain the foundation of the relationship. In response, President Xi told Modi that the world is watching this meeting closely, stressing that New Delhi and Beijing should set an example by fostering unity among developing countries. Xi believes that reconciliation between China and India is in the fundamental interests of both nations, and he reiterated a shared understanding that each country presents the other with development opportunities, not threats. He added that China and India should act as partners rather than competitors, aiming for peaceful coexistence and joint progress. Public opinion suggests that Xi initially came to power with grand ambitions, aiming to reclaim land occupied by India, unify Taiwan, and compete for dominance in the Asia-Pacific region. Yet, Xi's lack of diplomatic skills and governance abilities has led to chaos both at home and internationally. Now he's forced to yield to India, which many view as a humiliating move for China. Historically, China has had numerous territorial disputes with its neighbors, with claims that date back to the Qing dynasty. Successive Chinese governments, from the Qing to the Republic of China, never abandoned these claims. However, under the CCP, Jiang Zemin emerged as a leader who, with political motives, aimed to resolve all border disputes during his tenure, often making substantial concessions. Notably, he not only secretly relinquished 1.8 million square kilometers of land occupied by Russia, but also ceded 3,000 square kilometers in the Jiangdong 64 villages area, which earned him a notorious reputation as China's greatest traitor. Today, the remaining territorial dispute mainly lies along the China-India border, which is divided into 3 regions. The western section around Ladakh, a central section bordering Tibet between India's Himachal Pradesh and Uttarakhand, and the eastern section along the border of Arunachal Pradesh. The China-India territorial disputes have seen some strange twists, with major conflicts occurring in the same areas as the 2020 skirmish. From October 20th to November 21st, 1962, the two countries fought a border war known in India as the Battle of Wolong. The conflict began when, under Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru's orders, Indian forces crossed the McMahon Line into Tsetong in southern Tibet, demanding the CCP's forces withdraw from Tibet and stop persecuting Tibetans. The CCP retaliated with a military offensive, resulting in a devastating loss for the Indian forces. During this war, the international community overwhelmingly supported India, with the US and the Soviet Union unexpectedly joining forces to aid India by providing weapons, supplies, and public support, framing India's actions as just. Interestingly, while the CCP forces crossed the McMahon Line and defeated India's northern forces, taking control of southern Tibet, a region historically belonging to China, they unilaterally declared a ceasefire 2 months later and fully withdrew. In 1986, the Indian Parliament established the state of Arunachal Pradesh with over 1 million residents, including much of southern Tibet. Manoj Joshi, an Indian defense analyst and author of Understanding the India-China Border, remarked that the reason behind China's withdrawal remains unclear. Journalist Neville Maxwell, in his book India's China War, wrote, quote, "When the Chinese army achieved a decisive victory, the Chinese government abruptly and unconditionally announced the full retreat, which left the world not relieved but shocked. In the history of warfare, no victorious side has ever voluntarily withdrawn unconditionally, forfeiting hard-won gains without any promise from the losing side," unquote. Chinese military writer Jin Hui, in his essay The Lure of Tibet's Medoc, reflects on that period of history, stating, quote, "The victor and the defeated are clearly defined, yet the outcome is entirely different. The victor gained nothing but the title of winner while taking on all the losses of the defeated. The defeated, lacking only the name of victory, gained all the spoils of the winner. The victor was so intoxicated by success that even the total loss of their gains and immense humiliation left them indifferent. Meanwhile, the defeated, denied only the victor's title, have been sharpening their resolve, vowing revenge." Some analysts, however, believe that in this latest China-India standoff, the CCP ended up on the losing side, and Xi Jinping may just be buying time. They suggest the CCP won't allow another humiliating loss of territory as both China and India continue to build infrastructure, reinforce deployments, and accelerate troop readiness along the border. Xi is unlikely to abandon the goal of reclaiming China's lands.